You're watching Dante's Boxing Nation. Woo!
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Well, for those of you fans, you boxing fans that love the sport of boxing and you hate to go a week or two without any good fights, any relevant fights to watch that week, I have some really good news for you guys. It appears Al Haymon and the PBC series, they are flooding the month of July with undefeated prospects, champions, top contenders, all facing off in very meaningful, relevant fights. But wait a minute, it even gets better than that. The majority of these fights, if not all of these fights, are all going to be on free TV. Matter of fact, before I go into some of these fights, let me go ahead and quote what the Vice President of Communications for Al Haymon Boxing had to actually say. Quote, "The month of July is typically a slow time for boxing, but not this July. There will be 8 PBC series shows that offer some of the most exciting boxers in the sport today." End quote. Now let's talk about some of these exciting fighters that he was just referring to. But before we get into the fights that we haven't seen yet, the month of July for the PBC series, it already started off with a great card that was on PBC. And that was Jamel Herring versus Denis Shafikov, which turned out to be somewhat of a minor upset. You have the former Marine Jamel Herring, who was the undefeated rising prospect, going up against a very tough, durable Denis Shafikov, who was a 2-time title challenger that had only lost to Rances Bartholomew, who I believe is one of the best fighters in the world pound for pound, and he also lost to Miguel Vasquez. So it was a tough uphill battle for Jamel Herring, and he took a minor setback and lost the fight. So that was the first fight that kicked off for the PBC series. Now I want to talk about some other fights that we're going to see in the month of July. Now I'm not going to go in order, so just bear with me. But let's go ahead and start with the heavyweight championship bout that's going to be on free TV on Fox. And that's, of course, the heavyweight champion of the world, Deontay Wilder, who's going to be going against Chris Arreola. Because a lot of fans believe that Felix Diaz actually beat Lamont Peterson. So Felix Diaz versus Sammy Vasquez, this is a hell of a fight. It's a 50-50 fight. Now, not only are we getting the opportunity to watch a heavyweight title match on free TV, but it gets even better. It has a really good undercard fight as well. And that is the undefeated Sammy Vasquez going up against Felix Diaz. It could be argued that Felix Diaz is still actually undefeated because the only blemish on his record was somewhat of a controversial loss to Lamont Peterson. Now, if you thought that was enough right there, the PBC series is not finished yet. They are putting on another card immediately following the Deontay Wilder card, and this is another undefeated prospect, Jamal James, going up against an always dangerous Well Omotoso, whose record is 26-2 with 21 knockouts. Now, for those of you guys who aren't that familiar with Jamal James, he just beat one of the prospects in Javier Molina. Javier Molina is the twin brother of Oscar Molina. And Oscar Molina, he just lost on the PBC series against one of the best junior middleweight prospects, Swift Jarrett Hurd. Now, if you're not too familiar with the Molina twins, they are former Olympians. They were both considered like #1 in the country as amateurs. So there was some real high expectations for their pro career, and still is. But both of them recently took a minor setback because they both lost to other undefeated prospects, which is Jarrett Hurd and Jamal James. So mark your calendar for July 16th because the PBC series is putting on 2 cards on the same day. That is, once again, Deontay Wilder versus Arreola on the undercard. You have Felix Diaz versus Sammy Vasquez. And then on Fox Sports 1, you have the undefeated Jamal James against Well Amotoso. Now on July 29th, PBC on Spike returns with a really good fight that pins light heavyweight Adonis Superman Stevenson going up against a very dangerous opponent in Thomas Top Dog Williams. Thomas Williams has a record of 20-1 with 14 knockouts. Now on the undercard of that fight, you have Chad Dawson making his return, but he's going up against a real dangerous top contender, an undefeated prospect, Eleider Alvarez. That's a very tough fight for Chad Dawson. In fact, if Eleider Alvarez wins this fight, which I believe most people expect he will, this will basically catapult Eleider Alvarez's career, especially if he wins in impressive fashion. And then the month ends with an explosive card, which is Leo Santa Cruz going up against Carl Frampton, the battle of the undefeateds in a title match. And then on the same card on PBC, you have the return of Mikey Garcia going against Elijo Rojas. And the card opens up with Tony Harrison, 23-1 with 19 knockouts, going up against Sergey Rabchenko, 27-1 with 20 knockouts. Once again, that's on Showtime. Then on the same night, you have more PBC boxing on Showtime Extreme, where you have Paulie Malignaggi in the main event going against Gabriel Bracero. And there's even more fights on that undercard. Now this Saturday, July 9th, you guys are going to see one of the best prospects out right now, and that's the undefeated super featherweight contender Mario Barrios, who will take on former title challenger Devis Baschiero, a 130-pound title eliminator that serves as the 12-round main event on ESPN on PBC and ESPN Deportes as well. Then following that week, July 15th, unbeaten super lightweight contender Sergey Lipinets, 9-0 with 7 knockouts, will battle the very hard puncher Walter Castillo. That's going to be the main event on PBC on ESPN and Deportes as well. Like I said, that'll be July 15th. Now, for those of you guys who aren't too familiar with Sergey Lipinets, this is another really good boxing prospect because with only 7 or 8 fights, he actually beat Lydell Rhodes, who is still a good boxing prospect that fights out of the Mayweather gym. Now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. I'm not going to talk about all the fights that are listed in July on PBC, but what I will do is I'll include the schedule so you guys can see every single fight. So there you have it. The PBC series and Al Haymon, they are giving boxing fans an enormous amount of boxing to watch because July, it usually is a very slow month. Matter of fact, if it wasn't for the PBC series, we probably would only be watching Sergey Kovalev versus Isaac Chilemba, which is another fight that I look forward to watching. I really didn't care who Sergey Kovalev's opponent was because I already know that he's fighting against Andre Ward in November. Same thing applies for Ward. I didn't really care who Ward was fighting next because it's already written in stone that he's fighting against Sergey Kovalev this year in the biggest fight of the year. Okay? So, you know, guys, if it wasn't for the PBC series, not only would we not be getting all these fights in July, but can you imagine how many months there would have been with hardly any fights that month if it wasn't for the PBC series? We would have had a lot of dry spells this year. This is what boxing fans ask for, and this is what we are getting. So that's pretty much all I got for now. I'm on to the next one.